Good afternoon, everyone. Today I am going to be inking my newest Tales Fantastic illustration, and I'm excited to share with you the process and a little bit of my thoughts behind the picture and the story that goes with it. So here's the sketch of my picture that I'm going to be working on, and as you can see, it's kind of a Regency world with a bit of a twist. The world that I've created is like Jane Austen's world, but it has dragons in it, which I feel pretty excited about because I love Jane Austen and dragons. So the goal for this painting is to make it look really kind of similar to these illustrations by H.M. Brock. He was an illustrator that I believe worked a lot in the early 1900s, but I feel like the pictures really capture that kind of Regency time period feel. So that's what I'm going to go for in this image. So as you can see from his pictures, he did a lot of the line work, and it's more outlines rather than like cross hatching and a lot of shading with the ink. So I'm going to try to do that with this one and then do some of the other heavy lifting with color, which will be a different video than this one. And if you're interested in seeing how I did the drawing process for this video, all of my patrons have access to that. More videos and explaining how I built the illustration and how I came to this point where it's at. I have the drawing ready to go on a hot press Arches watercolor paper, 140 pound. Hot press paper is smoother so that the ink, I think, will go on it really well, and then when I paint it, it will be a good enough quality to take the paint that I want to be able to put on there. And I'm going to ink it with these Copic multiliners. So, and I'm going to do it with black. I have a lot of different colors, but like I said, the goal is to kind of match that old style, and all of those lines are in black. So we're going to stick with black for this one. Okay, I think that's all for now, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'll talk to you later. So before I show you the time lapse that I made of the illustration that I inked, I wanted to give you a few inking tips that I like to use when I'm drawing. So the first one is for getting straight lines. This works really good if you're doing like a texture, or in this picture I did a lot of lines on the wall, like following the walls and the furniture and things like that. So it works better for me to pull, and I have my paper at an angle, which is the angle that my arm is going to go. So when I pull this way with my elbow, my whole arm goes. This is something that might be good to practice before you actually do it on a picture that you really care about. So just get yourself a scrap paper like this and just work on pulling your straight lines. This is why when you see in the time lapse, I am moving the board around a lot, because I want the lines to work with the direction that my arm is going to go. So that's tip number one. The second tip is to kind of plan the line in your mind before you draw it. So obviously with ink, you can't go back and erase things like you can with a pencil drawing or a digital piece of art. So you'll see a lot in the time lapse, if it's not too fast, where I kind of hover over an area and I do this, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to make my line be before I do it. So anyway, so that's a good way to just kind of mentally prepare what's going to happen before you put the permanent line down. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 is to remember, or if you haven't ever learned it before, I guess you're not remembering, but that darker lines come forward, that's up, but it means forward, and lighter lines move to the background. So in this picture that I just inked, and you'll see the time lapse, you can see that in the background their lines are a lot lighter, even though there's probably some places a little more detail there. I tried to keep the lines lighter, and as it moves forward the lines get a little bit darker. Not like super dark, but dark enough. And I actually used a thinner pen in the background. It also applies for when you have, like, say here's an arm and there's some fabric at the elbow and the sleeve and the hand, right? I can't draw hands, but anyway. So you have this arm elbow situation, and you want to show that this line is in front of this line, so you can make that a little darker. Same with how these overlap over here. So see, that just brings it forward a little tiny bit. It gives it more of a 3D look. And one more tip I have for you is a similar principle. When you're doing ink and you're not doing, you know, a bunch of shading and cross hatching like this, like in this picture where it's mostly it's just line work and the color is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, you can make things look a little more 3D by making your lines thicker on the shadow side and thinner on the light side. So in this scenario, if the light is coming from here, you can make this line a little bit thicker and this line a little bit thicker. And that's going to give it a little bit of a 3D look, where this line is lighter and that one's darker. You know, intellectually or intuitively, that this side is on the shadow side. Does that make sense? So watch for these different techniques that I'm using as I work on the bigger illustration with the time lapse, and hopefully you'll be able to kind of see it in action as it goes. So here's the finished inked illustration. I hope it was useful for you to watch it being created, and that the tips were also useful, or more useful maybe. And if you're curious about what's happening in this illustration, you can read it online for free starting October 3rd. That's talesfantastic.com where you can see that. If you want to read it sooner than that, it comes out for patrons on September 28th, and that's 2017. So I realize that you might be watching this video in the future. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up down below, and if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put them down below too in the comments box. Thanks.